Let's kick off with a piece of personal introduction. So please let us know who you are. How does it feel to be in Dortmund, and how does it feel to live in MiCA for a few months now? So what's your personal situation and sentiment? Tommaso, starting with you.
Sure, happy to start, happy to be here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tommaso Astazi. I'm the Policy Director at Blockchain for Europe, which is a Brussels-based trade association representing the blockchain industry, the Web3 space, with European policymakers. So the main thing that we have been doing the last few years actually was MiCA. So I keep having nightmares actually about MiCA and all the pages that I had to read. So I live in a MiCA world since a few years, but now we are obviously in an actual MiCA reality with all the implementation of the rules that we've been discussing for many years. And of course, as we're going to discuss today, there is a lot of questions still, a lot of issues, a lot of potential regulatory arbitrage and differences in the way that MiCA is being applied. But still, as an association, we are there on the front line trying to defend the blockchain industry, trying to convince European policymakers of the relevance of blockchain technology so that they actually understand what they're talking about when they're called to regulate it. And so, yeah, happy to be here and happy to be in Dortmund, very first time, great venue. I'm a football fan as well, so obviously it's great to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm not sure if AS Roma qualifies as football.
Okay, let's not start that, but
heading over to another football country. Armin, what's the situation in Liechtenstein and
Yes, my name is Armin Schmid. I'm actually the CEO of Bitcoin Suisse in Liechtenstein. So we do have a European company right there. So Bitcoin Suisse is one of the oldest crypto brokers in Europe, based in Switzerland. But yes, Switzerland is not part of the European Union, not of the European Economic Area, and therefore we have a company in Liechtenstein. And this gives us the opportunity actually to bridge Switzerland to Europe. And I think already today we have about, let's have 50% of our clients are international based and not Swiss based, and therefore Europe actually is a very important market for us. With MiCA, it became a little more difficult for Switzerland, and therefore we are in the middle of a MiCA application process, so I cannot really talk too much about it, but I can tell you I went through quite a lot of documentation, etc. My background is actually from payments and also from e-commerce, so I'm now in crypto for about 7.5 years, done stable coins, crypto payments, so you can pay taxes in Switzerland with your cryptos. Therefore, I'm quite deep into the discussion as well. But MiCA right now is our main topic, and hopefully sooner than later, Liechtenstein will also grant some licenses there.
Thomas, maybe you start by explaining in which unit of the ECB you're working and what's your remit. And maybe you share a little bit about your personal MiCA story. How have you been involved?
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. Indeed, I come from the ECB, so the European Central Bank and the House, because we're like two separate houses that works on the banking supervision. I mean, the European Central Bank has many mandates, works on monetary policy. I work entirely on the banking supervision. We supervise the 100 plus biggest European banks. I'm leading a team that is working on IT risk mainly, but as IT risk also overlaps or connects very well with crypto. I say that I work with the 3 C's, so it's crypto, cloud, and cyber. So you cannot really have silos, you cannot really understand each other if you don't have a view of technology as a whole. Like all ECB colleagues, just to clarify that I'm speaking on my own capacity, so I don't necessarily represent the ECB on my views. But spoiler alert, I'm not going to say something controversial or something that will be so provocative, let's say. That's also my second time in Dortmund. I also was in the first conference here, so I knew the city well and the stadium and the ways around.
Yeah, so we feel the industry is growing, the relevance is also growing. It's a nice, let's say, experience after last year. Thanks a lot to Sasha and his team for setting up conference. It's also located quite well in the middle of Europe. So Alireza, you've been heavily involved with different positions you had in different law firms over the past years. How does it feel right now? Apart from what we have on paper in black and white, I think we might have some considerations about open questions, but then of course the reality in court is also something that might be interesting. How do you feel right now?
I mean, first of all, I'm happy to be back here in Dortmund because I'm a member of the Dortmund Supporter Association. So I'm coming here to watch games, and now combining one passion, which is football, with another passion, crypto, which is great. So thanks for having me here. Yeah, as you said, I have different roles, supporting 1inch with policy and also with regulation topics. I'm a partner with Deloitte, leading the crypto unit, I would say, in the DACH region. And I was also for a long time supporting associations like Bundesblock, still doing so. European Blockchain Association in NATBA, was a board member there. In the MiCA task force, I was supporting to draft the first MiCA text. So, and now when we have like MiCA being applicable, almost, it's effective but not fully applicable. I have to say, also looking over to the US, where some other law is coming in my view, more supportive of the crypto economy. We have to watch out that we are not lagging behind with our MiCA regulation, and especially on how the different national competent authorities, NCAs, are applying not just the MiCA text, but especially the level 2 and level 3 documentation, which is, in my view, not harmonized. And maybe this is also the reason why maybe some could still do some regulatory arbitrage within Europe, definitely.
We learned in the previous panel that AI might help with that, with level 2 and level 3 documentation. But joking aside, which are your main, let's say, concerns about that level of details, especially for vendors, CASPs, and other technology companies?
I'm pretty sure that Tommaso can also say something on that, but looking like from really the market players and looking what the pain is for the market players, for example, the EBA no action letter, the no action letter which says if you provide custody or crypto transfer for stablecoins, you suddenly need, besides the MiCA license, also an EMI license, like a payment service provider license, which is, in my view, not fine. It's not how the regulation inside Europe is working. It's not that you need 2 licenses if you provide crypto asset services in the end of the day. And looking at how the NCAs are applying this, BaFin, for example, was straight asking all the CASPs to apply for a PSB license in order to get the license by March next year, because until then the no action will end. At the same time, we are still waiting for the final text of the PSD and PSR to really explain on if you really need a PSB license for that activity. I would say no, not really. And other regulators like FMA in Austria, but maybe also FMA in Liechtenstein, they're not pushing the CASPs to apply for such a license, because it's ridiculous to have 2 licenses, 2 auditors, 2 different lines of activities, because you're a crypto asset service provider not just for cryptocurrencies, but also for stablecoins. So also for the stablecoin issuers, I think it's quite terrible to see that you have such strong regulation on e-money token. I mean, asset reference token, forget about it, there's no asset reference token. So we have such strong regulation on e-money token, no yield, no nothing. And then you look at the US, and yeah, you see that Circle is quite active with their USDC, and the EuroC, in my view, it's only just a mean to get a license, but really the business is outside of Europe when it comes to stablecoins. And with such kind of level 2 documentation and different application by NCAs, we should not wonder that people are either setting up now tokenized money market funds, or going out of the MiCA regime, going to the MiFID regime, or just leaving the EU and saying, okay, I don't really need it, like Ethena and other players.
But at least we are seeing some new companies, getting first licenses, like AllUnity, so things are moving. But of course, we have to see how adoption is. What's the sentiment in Switzerland, Armin? You have been leading also in terms of crypto regulation in that market, and now you seem to take the Liechtenstein route into the MiCA territory through the EWR. Acronyms in English, sometimes difficult in the morning.
EA.
EA, yeah, you're right, sorry. What's the sentiment in Switzerland overall? Do you also feel this, we are falling behind sentiment that Alireza was just, trying to evoke?
So Switzerland in general was quite advanced in, let's say, 2016, 17, 18. I think we were one of the first really to do some good stuff towards regulation, especially the token classification was one of the first pieces, and also the stablecoin discussion, etc. This is a little bit history. Switzerland is losing ground. That's my personal view, by the way, because in the end, the risk appetite is lower. Also, the politics are slightly different right now. Back in the days, or even some federal ministers were walking in and out of our office. This is no longer the case. Somehow, the crypto sentiment amongst the politicians is much lower. And yes, Credit Suisse didn't really help. Other things that happened in the past didn't really help to boost somehow additional risk appetite. Therefore, the path actually via Liechtenstein is a great opportunity, and we're not the only ones doing and applying this as a bridge then actually to Europe, but also other Swiss-based companies, because in the end, the market doesn't really stop at the border. We have to somehow be part of this, and I'm positive actually that we are able to do and to go this route. But it is quite a lot, and especially moving targets in the middle of a process. Yes, we went through a couple of pages. Our first application was 2,500 pages thick, and with all the attachments, etc. Now we have to add potentially some additional licenses. It's just a burden. I think we have to somehow try to reduce it. I'm still thankful, but let's get it done and let's get business afterwards, because in the end, someone has to pay for this. We shouldn't forget about this.
Thanks for that perspective. Thomas, as you just stated, you're looking after different technology areas, but mostly from the perspective of the larger banks. Can you say something maybe more from your personal experience? How have the discussions changed? Because, you know, when we started MiCA, it was a reaction to Facebook and Libra's plan to launch a cryptocurrency or a stablecoin. That term was coined back then. In the meantime, you know, we have a completely different international landscape. Is this reflected in internal discussions? Because as Alireza pointed out, you know, after the regulation is before regulation, and we have to iterate, we have to adapt. Where are we? Not with what's written in black and white on paper here, but where are we with our strategic assessment in Europe? What can you say about this?
Well, for sure the situation is evolving, but I mean, even before the MiCA due dates and the launch, we had big banks that were trying to enter into crypto custody, let's say, or explore what they could do. There was a lot of experimentation on tokenized deposits that is still continuing anyway. So for sure, big banks, they know that if they want to stay in the game, they need to experiment, they need to change if needed, and see how things can be streamlined. I mean, you may know all the experimentation also that's also beyond my remit, but of course, since big banks are involved, you know the Pontes project that is ending next year, and then the APIA project will start. So Pontes is about bridges, how to connect different infrastructure and different systems with the target system. And the APIA is the new highway, so how a new financial innovative system could look like that could have the rail for all different types of assets. I mean, from a supervisory side, like we see it, we're both proactive and reactive, but in the sense we are technology neutral. I mean, we're not going to impose the banks to enter AI or cloud or move their core banking system to blockchain or whatever. But we need to make sure that they know what they're doing when they're doing something. I mean, unless there is something that is non-compliant with regulation, which is not usually the case because regulation is principle-based, especially DORA. It's not something that banks cannot do, but they have to make sure that they know what they're doing. So we're like a fourth line of defense here. We're like also consulting the banks and seeing, let's say, if they want to enter any interaction or third-party reliance with innovative companies on crypto, tokenization, or blockchain, or whatever, we need to know that the governance is there, that they know what they're doing, that everything about outsourcing that is also now in DORA.
Thanks a lot. Tommaso, let's talk about European regulatory policies. You, of course, are doing this with Blockchain for Europe. I'm also at the board of INATBA. We have a few sister associations, and we all know that the speed has been reduced in Europe over the past years. This had to do with, new commission, new parliament, other real-world problems, to recoin a certain term. But what do we need to do right now as a next step? Do we need more wake-up calls? I'm not sure if the second or third line of defense is the right approach for Europe. I think we should worry about how to speed up. What are the drivers for you in your work? What can we do? Do we need more sandboxes? Do we need better consultation processes? Because we need to, of course, safeguard our democratic principles and our way to work. I'm fully in favor of regulation. But somehow we lose too much speed between initial discussions and then an economic reality that is, of course, decisive for startups. Do you have tips?
Tips for the European Union to actually work in the way that it's supposed to work? Well, that's a big question. I think we're talking about some literally problems that exist forever in the way that certain things are structured, the way that such a major jurisdiction can legislate and regulate different industries, different sectors, right? This is just a very intrinsic problem of the way that policymaking is done in Europe. But now, when we look at policymaking in such a innovative technological sector, this problem becomes even bigger because the pace of regulation will never be able to keep up with the pace of innovation in this industry. And so this has been clear from the start. When we started talking about MiCA in 2018, 2019, it was almost too late already, right? As we were just saying, MiCA was drafted with Libra, with the Facebook DM project in mind. We have this whole chapter about asset reference tokens, and then there is no such thing as an asset reference token anywhere in Europe, right? So we have a whole body of regulation that talks about something that actually was never really developed in the way that they thought it would. And so this really shows how the pace of innovation, the developments in the market are way faster than the way that, than the policy-making process that takes over years and so on. And so the European Union has these problems, but it also has a problem generally in this idea that sure, regulation is important, and we have always been calling for a good regulatory framework for the crypto industry because we looked at what was happening before MiCA, where 27 different member states had 27 different regulatory approaches for crypto companies. And that, of course, was not ideal, right? We talked about it, crypto is a global market. These companies want to operate cross-border, and as soon as you need to operate cross-border in two jurisdictions that have two different regulatory frameworks, you need two licenses. You need literally two applications processes for the same exact services. Now, the harmonization of those rules, the creation of this one single EU rule book for the crypto industry was super important for the industry to develop in Europe, but it was done in a way that we see now the final outcome, the actual results in practice. It's probably still driving a lot of smaller companies out of the market because they're not ready to comply. They don't have the resources to go through these tedious and costly and long application processes sometimes. And as we were just saying before, now there might be an extra application for a license that they need to take up because they're dealing with EMTs and stable coins. So generally, yes, I think Europe works with wake-up calls a lot, right? So the reason, as we say, the reason why MiCA was introduced in the first place was because of the fear coming from the Facebook Libra project and how this could become a widely used means of payment in Europe, which will be completely outside of European banking rails, right? Because it will be a digital asset issued by an American tech company that will then be able to be used by all the users and so on. So the fear of Libra generated MiCA, and now I can tell you maybe a bit of a spoiler, but the fear of what is happening in the United States and the liberalization, let's say, of the private stablecoin market in the US is again scaring a lot of people in the European Union, probably a lot of colleagues of Thomas in the European Central Bank that are somehow sounding the alarm bells and saying we need to do something, we need to reopen MiCA, we need to have a MiCA 2.0 because of the rules on stablecoins that we believe are already strict enough in Europe, but somehow there is still this fear that there will be a dollarization of the European economy through stablecoins. And so again, if we are to see a MiCA 2.0, it's probably coming out of fear again and out of these wake-up calls which anyway don't bring to the right outcome because they bring to more regulatory action rather than real support for the industry, funding, opportunities, sandboxes, as you were mentioning. So there is a lot more that the European Union should do on top of regulation, but for now we're focusing on regulation.
So you can see how emotional you can get if you talk about regulatory policy. You wanted to add something, Armin?
Yeah, definitely a little one, because I believe especially technology neutrality is not there. And I think crypto, the entire blockchain economy right now is punished. And we have much higher, much stricter regulation. We have quite a lot of burden. And as you mentioned, I think this is not really doable for smaller companies. Yes, some bigger ones can make it. Also the international ones, be it the non-European ones coming now to Europe, they can really finance this. But especially if you want to do something good from an innovation perspective, it has to be technology neutral and not somehow punishing the crypto and blockchain industry.
Agreed. Alireza and Thomas, a question to both of you. You know, maybe it's also a generational thing. Maybe it's not an accident that we have old and more grayer men on the panel here. To me, it seems also, if I look at the work we are doing in the lobby associations, that for younger founders, you know, if the environment is not sound economically, then you think about going to Dubai or you chill on the Bahamas. So what are we losing? Is this also part of, let's say, the democratic self-perception of Europe that is fading if regulation is not fertile enough? Or should we rather tell people and companies, hey, well, you can go somewhere, but think about the consequences for yourself and for the country you leave. So what is it between the lines that has an impact? And how can we shape regulation to be more positive and constructive and forward-looking?
Well, maybe I can start. Just to clarify that I'm also on the same side of the regulation, because I'm also on the receiving side of the regulation. We're not regulators, we're supervisors. What the ECB is doing is also opining. So we issue an opinion on MiCA, on DORA, on AI regulation, and you can find it. This is a public document. So we're also in this public consultation phase, maybe in a slightly different way, but we're also part of the consultation of MiCA and DORA, and I also contributed to that. Since 2020, I'm working on this field also on policy. I mean, we're on the same side. I don't really see an issue. I mean, I can judge, let's say, by the interactions I have with supervised banks. I think the average age is rather low, because if banks really want to stay in the game, of course they try to attract talent. But talent in the EU, it's not there, so for sure there is a war of talent. There are a lot of changes going on. But I wouldn't say that this is a non-fertile, I don't say that stability is like a contrary of innovation. I mean, for sure we can have both. Let's say for DORA, that I guess it's also more in my mandate, and I see this is also principle-based in the, there is a very strong proportionality there. So the bigger banks have totally different things to do to comply with smaller companies. So I don't think that this is like stifling innovation in any way. I would say it's promoting. But at the same time, if a small company cannot comply with like a baseline hygiene on cyber or compliance on governance, then how this thing could scale up, how this thing can be viable. Also resilience, I hear also from bigger banks that this is a big cost for the banks. So DORA, I mean, for big banks, DORA was there even before DORA, so it's not something new. But I would say that resilience is like the new capital, because now resilience is at the board level, this is being discussed, it's being brought there. And also resilience is what makes the profits keep coming. So it makes the it's not only for this quarter and the next quarter, it's about making stable entities that can survive and can be resilient and change. And I think it's the same for MiCA, because also crypto companies and CASPs are also under DORA, so we cannot really separate all this framework of digital finance in Europe. For sure there are issues with MiCA, because this is like a moving target. You may have seen also the issues with multi-issue stablecoins, because now I think it's the other way around. I think Europe is like a safe haven for stablecoins now, because in scenarios, and we need to have scenarios there, there is a bank run, like the crisis we had some months ago. All the redeeming of the stablecoins will go to the EU, because there is a framework there. Yeah, but for the EU, this is not something that is viable, because for sure there need to be reserves in banks, for a good reason, I guess, and I'm sure it is, but this cannot be, we cannot save the whole stablecoin ecosystem just because there's a failure.
So when 1inch was approaching me when I was a partner of a different law firm 8 years ago, they wanted to get a license in Germany. So the both founders, Sergei and Anton, they're from Germany, they're from Stuttgart. And they asked me if I can support them to get a license. And of course, any advisor would say, yes, it's very interesting, I would do that, earn money. I checked out their business case for a couple of weeks and then got back to them and told them I wouldn't apply in Germany. And they said, why? I said, because even if you apply and everything is fine with the documentation, at that time and still today, I don't see any national competent authority in Europe which understands the nature of a DAO and how this should be regulated, even in Liechtenstein. Yeah? So I told them to look into Dubai at that time, and they did that, and they continued their business. They became the biggest DEX aggregator. By volumes, they're bigger than Uniswap and anyone combined in trading volumes. They still do their business, and they do it in a nice way, and they also do lots of things with AML and sanctions and security audits and stuff like that, and even supporting authorities on hacks and scams and stuff like that. So it works, but I would still not tell them to come to Europe and apply. The law firm who did this for Ethena, which was applying for the first asset reference token application in Germany, I would have not done that with Ethena neither. So you saw what happened with Ethena. They became the fastest growing stablecoin issuer with only 149 clients. Most of them are business clients from the US, corporate clients, not retail. And so instead of getting a license or not getting a license, they basically got named and blamed and shamed on a web page. And in the end, it turned out that it was not even an asset reference token. So if you ask the European Commission, they say it's an e-money token. So yeah, I mean, I'm for regulation. So I'm by nature a regulatory lawyer. I'm doing that since 2012, and I supported many banks to get a license, even Iranian banks to get a license. But I would nowadays not recommend anyone to have a complicated business case to apply in Europe, rather to continue the business outside, because if you apply for the license and it doesn't really work out, you're really close to lose the business. And I'm for fair treatment of business, but if I listen to the president of BaFin, Mr. Branson, he gave yesterday or today an interview again in Handelsblatt and said, don't invest in Bitcoin, Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. They're saying this since December 2013. In December 2013, Bitcoin was at 12 euro. So at the same time, they supported Wirecard. At the same time, we don't see any banks which were involved in Cum-Ex or Cum-Cum being shut down. So I'm for like a fair treatment of the players in the market by the same rules. So same rules applies to anyone. And as you just said it correctly, if you look at the definition of the crypto assets inside the MiCA, it is referencing to DLT or similar technology. So it's not technology neutral. Yeah, you can set up a system of payback and something like that, which is very similar, but it's not on blockchain, so you don't have it regulated. It's limited range, it's limited network. But when it comes to crypto, it is regulated. So how does it work with like same rules for the same business? So, and this is something which I say we're not there yet.
Maybe a follow-up question, because Thomas and especially You mentioned the fear aspect. So what do you think, Alireza, with your experience? What are the aspects that that regulators are most afraid about these days? Or is it just technical discrimination?
I don't really think it's for all of them technical discrimination. I think for most of them it's a lack of knowledge. And this is something which I don't understand. If you look in Dubai at VARA, they have hired PwC and other advisors to deal with the cases. If you look at the Irish Central Bank, they have hired lots of people supporting them on MiCA applications. If you look in Germany, and I think even in FMA in Liechtenstein, they're not asking for support for people who have knowledge in this. It's very funny. I mean, ESMA was asking EBA for writing a paper on how DeFi landscape looks like and a regulation of DeFi, and then EBA was giving that to IBM Promontory, and they wrote a paper which was really rubbish. It was really terrible, like a terrible document, and based on that document, then recommendations were coming out. And I was thinking, okay, you can do that better. You can get really, if you don't understand the technology, we have like crypto custody. We have it not just for 2 years. In Germany, we have it regulated since 2020, so for 5 years. And even before that, we had it. So now to ask after 5 years, is like Fireblocks or is it an MPC solution? Is it custody or not? And you ask 3 different NCAs and you get 4 different answers. So this is not how it should work. I mean, if there is a lack of technical understanding, you can get support. No one is expecting the regulator to know everything. That's not how it works. I mean, if you look at the Ministry of Defense, they get really lots of support when it comes to doing something with defense. But when it comes to innovation, when it comes to blockchain and crypto, I don't see it there for the whole European economic area. There are some NCAs who are quite active. There are some who treat it with like the minimum personnel and expertise. Yeah.
I guess it's a problem if founders in Dubai offer tokens for competent young people, then they might prefer to go with the project instead of working for a regulator. That's also part of our reality. We all know that the struggle for skilled labor is there. But I think
maybe,
you made
Sebastian, maybe
sure,
I can
go
share
ahead.
my experience on a similar note. So that was back in 2018. I was leading in the SSM, in banking supervision, some streams that we needed to address even then, innovative technologies that banks are using, and if we need something more from the supervisor perspective, if we need to equip our supervisors with something more. And I don't know what is your impression also, because you seem to be very passionate of how low the standard is. But my impression is that many NCAs, so competent authorities, brought experts. I mean, we had a very diverse team of lawyers, of tech people, I mean, I'm also a mathematician, I'm also in the tech part, and I don't work with numbers anymore, and I work with policy. But this is also very interesting. We had lawyers, we had innovation, and we drafted over many months some papers and some guidance for supervisors, very hands-on on how it would look like to supervise, let's say, banks that enter into trade finance consortia. That was very working back then a lot. I mean, what we understood is also that the risks remain the same. There was nothing new in terms of risks. And the main risk we would see is lack of governance, lack of control. What we see now in stablecoins is liquidity risk a lot, and a lot of lack of governance. So all this needs to be worked out, because however we innovate on new things that we create, if we don't have something stable to work on with good governance, this will never fly. And this will never achieve mass adoption.
That's certainly true. I'm also afraid we have to wrap up. But let's be honest, we live in different times, even if we only look back 3 years. I'm coming from the media industry, where the digitalization of signal transmission has led to a completely new world, where physically limited operators have been taken away by the Netflixes of the world that have a global business. So we're still thinking in nation states categories, but we live in a 24/7 real-time world, which is a problem per se. I would suggest let's all collaborate. We're happy, I think, as experts, as associations, as companies, to work with regulators and supervisors to focus on, let's say, not what's the fear aspect, what's the constructive aspect to move forward. Of course, feel free to join business associations like ourselves. We just published a study on blockchain in corporate treasuries this morning because we believe that corporate treasuries will play an important role. So far, we have the existing financial system on the one hand side, and we have startups on the other hand side. We all worry about stability, but if we lose economic stability on the way, then we have the problem coming in through the back door. That's why corporates, we all know they have to play catch-up in Europe if it comes to innovation, and we need also those large corporate voices in the equation, apart from the banking, because we have to worry about sector coupling and efficiency in the overall economy. And with that, thanks everybody. Sorry if I have to cut you short a little bit. Please feel free to find the speakers outside here at the bar for questions. And let's move on to the next panel. Marcel.
Thank you.
Thank you.